Hi, my name is Samantha Goat. Of course, I'm not really a ghost. That's just my name. I'm 5 years old and live in Florida with my mom and dad. This is my friend Walkie the penguin. Walkie went on an adventure with my dad, Eric Ghost.
Antarctica is over 5,500 miles away from our home here in Florida. I flew from Miami, Florida on down to Ushuaia, Argentina, at the bottom of South America. And from there, I went with 11 other people in a boat to Antarctica, in a sailboat. It was an incredible adventure.
Dad, who else went with you to Antarctica?
Andy Dare was the captain of the sailboat. Andy is standing at the helm, leaning on the wheel that we used to steer the boat. Alex Sizer was our first mate. Alex is pulling on a rope, which is called a line on a sailboat. Mike Tattersfield was our sailboat's engineer. Mike is using a winch to pull in another line to adjust a sail. Alex, Andy, and Mike were our professional crew members. They work as sailors all the time. The rest of us came from different companies that were sponsoring Mission Antarctica.
We are approaching Cape Horn.
Helen Doyle was from New York City.
And it's pretty rocky and it's pretty wet.
Mike Pura was also from New York City. Mike and Helen worked together at Merrill Lynch. Juan de la Sarre was originally from Argentina, but he now works for Merrill Lynch in London, England. Tim Smither is with Knight Frank in London. Juan taught Tim how to sing a song in Spanish.
Is that pretty good? I think we have to try it again.
Jennifer Hafley came from Washington, D.C. She works for a company called Gavin Anderson. Kylie Pittman was with the Knight Frank Company in Perth, Australia. It looks like Kylie didn't think Antarctica was as cold as the rest of us did.
The fascination for
Alison
a
McGirt
long
came
time
from
in
Stockport,
Antarctica. I've got,
England.
friends
She
who've
works
been
for
down
Lever
there, and
Fabergé.
I've seen their photos and I'm incredibly jealous. So.
Steve Matthews came from Farnham, England. He works for Bupa in London.
Looks like it's going to be pretty good on here, actually, I have to say. It's a pretty neat boat. So far, so good.
I didn't know the others until I arrived in Ushuaia. We spent several days getting to know each other and learning how to work together on a sailboat. We became great friends. While we were in Ushuaia, I found Walkie in a store. Do you remember I called you on the phone and told you that I had a penguin for you?
Yes, I told you his name should be Walkie. Walkie stayed with Dad in Ushuaia, Argentina for a few days. Ushuaia is the most southern city in the whole world. It was a friendly place, but Dad and his new friends were anxious to start on their sailing adventure.
Today's our big day. We are packing out of the Hotel Tokien. We're going to go get on the boat. We loaded our luggage on carts to take it all down to our boat at the end of the dock. We hadn't realized how crowded it was going to be living aboard the boat, and we had to send a lot of our things back to the hotel to wait for us until we came back from Antarctica. After getting settled in, we spent some time getting the boat ready for our journey. It would be 3 weeks before we would return to Ushuaia. Ready for our departure. Now we're underway.
Yeah, it just feels good to get on the way, as you say. And we're about to start sailing as well, which should be good fun.
We spent our first day sailing down the Beagle Channel, in between the countries of Argentina and Chile. We visited the small town of Puerto Williams in Chile and spent the night there. The following morning, we left the continent of South America behind and set sail out into the Southern Ocean. We wouldn't see land again for 3 days. And as we soon discovered, sailing in the Beagle Channel was a lot smoother than what laid ahead for us in the Southern Ocean.
How much longer? Oh, I'm getting wet!
When you're sailing in the open ocean, there's no place to stop. You have to keep sailing all the time, even throughout the night. We broke into 3 teams of 3 people each. Each team was called a watch. I worked with Steve and Allie on my watch. Each watch would take turns doing the different kinds of work needed on the sailboat. Along with steering the boat and adjusting the sails, we had to prepare our own meals. We cooked in the ship's galley. It was not easy to cook when the boat was rocking back and forth. The stove was made to balance the pots and pans so they wouldn't slide off when the boat was moving. We also took turns washing dishes and recording the position of the boat in the ship's log.
Dad, where did you sleep?
This is where I will be sleeping. As you can see, I will be sleeping with a lot of my gear. I can keep my things in here and figure out how to sleep with the rest of them. Quite a bit of food on board. There weren't any stores out in the middle of the ocean, and there weren't going to be any stores in Antarctica for us either, so we had to make sure that we had everything that we needed with us in the boat. In the 3 days that it took us to go across the Drake Passage of the Southern Ocean, we didn't see any other people, but we really weren't alone out there. We saw lots of seabirds, albatross and petrels.
That is a big bird.
The albatross is a big bird. It spends most of its life living at sea. We also encountered some whales. Some of them were almost as large as our boat. Did you see it, Kylie?
Yeah, I saw it.
What'd you see?
I just saw the spout and half of its body.
Did you see the tail go down or not?
No. Then I came back up here.
There's a fluke. Go, look at that. Woo-hoo!
Go on, buddy.
Do it again. 3 times.
That is nice. Well, as you can see, we have arrived. We're in the Antarctic, and this is King George Island over here behind us. We've seen a few icebergs coming in. They're pretty spectacular looking things, actually. We're told by Andy that the island here is about 2,000 feet tall.
Rocky must have been so happy to finally be in Antarctica.
We had a small boat called a dinghy that we used to go exploring in since our sailboat wasn't able to go into shore in the shallow water. The dinghy was only big enough for 6 people at a time, and since there were 12 of us, we usually had to make 2 trips. We set out to explore King George Island and visit the Russian research base of Bellingshausen. We're on land. It feels strange to walk on this stuff. We hiked all the way across King George Island, from one side to the other. When we got to the other side, we found a group of young elephant seals. When grown up, these seals can weigh up to 8,000 pounds. That's about as much as 3 cars weigh. The seals didn't want us getting too close. People are not allowed to harm any animals or plants in Antarctica. This is their home, and we are just visitors. We also watched some Antarctic fur seals. They're not as big as the elephant seals. Elephant seals have a lot of blubber to keep them warm in Antarctica. The fur seals don't have as much blubber, but they're covered with a coat of fur which keeps them warm. Fur seals can walk on their hind flippers, where the elephant seals have to crawl on land on their bellies. We found a Weddell seal when we returned to the other side of the island, and a pair of South Polar skuas. My camera bag is being attacked. Antarctica is not a country, and it is not owned by any country. It is shared by over 40 countries that have built small research bases there. People go to the bases to study science, weather, animals, and the few small plants there. Even the people working at the bases don't really live there all the time. Most people go home during Antarctica's cold, dark winter season. We visited in summer, and even then it was always cold. Most of the bases have old equipment that is broken or no longer useful. Mission Antarctica is helping the bases send this garbage back home for recycling. This is an important way to help keep Antarctica beautiful for the future. In the year 2041, when Samantha will be all grown up, the countries that share Antarctica will meet to decide how they will continue to take care of it. Mission Antarctica knows that this will be an important year for people Samantha's age to be thinking about how to make sure that people continue to use Antarctica only for peaceful and scientific purposes. Because of this, Mission Antarctica named our boat for the year 2041.
Dad, why do you go to Antarctica?
Mission Antarctica is an organization that takes people like me to Antarctica so that we can see for ourselves just how beautiful it is and learn how important it is to take care of it for the future. Sensormatic Electronics, the company I work for, sponsors Mission Antarctica by giving them money to help with the cost of removing the old garbage for recycling. My friends on the trip were from other companies that also sponsor Mission Antarctica. Before we left King George Island, we met with the Russian people at the Bellingshausen base. When we were there, they had over 1,000 tons of garbage that they moved up to the beach so that Mission Antarctica could recycle it.
So Mission Antarctica are helping the Russians to fulfill their commitment to clean up the place. They want to do it, but they've got no money. So we're relatively rich. We can help them do that. And that's a good thing.
Since our visit, Mission Antarctica has already taken the garbage away. After spending 2 nights at King George Island, we woke up early one morning to continue our adventure and explore more of Antarctica. Our boat took us to Deception Island, which is actually the top of an underwater volcano. We used this map to help us get there, and then sail into the crater of the volcano through the small passage shown near the bottom of the map. We spent one night aboard the boat inside the volcano.
Dad, weren't you worried about the volcano erupting?
Not too much. The last time it erupted was back in 1992. In 1967, it destroyed a Chilean research base and covered this old whaling station with volcanic ashes. The volcano does heat up the water inside the crater. You can see steam coming off the water in some places. There's even one place where the water is warm enough for people to get into it.
Come for a swim, Eric. Makes sense.
That's the nice thing about being the cameraman. You don't always have to be a participant. They're gonna go for it. It's freezing out here. Helen and Jennifer were the first to try out the warm water.
Okay!
This is California. This is California.
Tim's going for it.
Hang on, this is George. It's actually quite warm. It's actually quite warm.
Yes, Tim, the water was warm, but the air was real cold. It was cold enough to snow. We even made a snowman as we continued along on our journey. Got Wacky the penguin out on deck, standing in line for a turn at the helm. And then troopers come up to join in the fun.
Trooper's mom.
Is it cold out? Do I need my fowler's trousers on?
Dad, is Antarctica really as cold as it looks?
It was pretty cold. The red suits we wore were called fowlies since they protected us from foul weather. They helped keep us warm in the cold wind and snow. My boots didn't work very well at keeping my toes warm though, even when I tried them with 3 pairs of socks. I always got cold when I had to steer the boat since there was so much wind. Because Antarctica is so cold, there were always icebergs to watch out for in the water. They came in all sizes and shapes. There were big ones, little ones, white ones, and blue ones. The blue color comes from the way the sun shines on icebergs that are very old and highly compressed. Blue ice comes from pure water. White ice is caused by water that is frozen along with tiny air bubbles. One huge iceberg had a large tunnel through it. It reminded me of an Eskimo's igloo, but there are no Eskimos in Antarctica. They live up in the Arctic, in the north. Some of the icebergs even had penguins or seals riding on them. One of my favorite icebergs even looked like a spaceship. Captain Andy and I had gone out in the dinghy to explore a large iceberg when we were back near the Russian base of Bellingshausen. As big as it looked to us, there was even more of it underneath the water. Most large icebergs have as much as 9 times more ice below the surface of the water than what can be seen above water. Even though the ocean water was salty, the icebergs were made of fresh water. They start out as snow that has fallen on the continent of Antarctica. After thousands of years, the snowfall is compressed into ice. The ice moves toward the ocean as glaciers and then breaks off and floats away. Plans for the evening are to anchor on this shipwreck. There's an old Norwegian whaling ship called the Guvenoren that has been wrecked at Enterprise Island since 1916. A couple of my friends went over to the wreck in the dinghy to get ready to tie up alongside the shipwreck. There were some Antarctic terns that were nesting on the shipwreck. They flew back and forth between the boat and the shore of nearby Enterprise Island. They weren't used to having people this close to their home. Shortly after we docked on the shipwreck, we heard a huge cracking sound and turned to see a nearby iceberg break apart. We needed some ice for our refrigerator, so a few of us headed out in the dinghy to chip off some ice from a part of the broken iceberg. We have fresh ice. Actually, it's not that fresh, is it, Mike?
No, it isn't. About 5,000 years old.
I have a piece of an iceberg here. Uh-oh.
Dad, that's silly.
Careful, you don't
The iceberg?
Actually pretty tasty. Not even a hint of salt in it. We spent 2 nights tied up to the Gouvernorans so that we could make trips in the dinghy over to explore the main continent of Antarctica. When I went over, Andy drove the dinghy and had to use his compass to navigate since we couldn't see where we were going with all the snow. It was a cold ride. We were greeted by some friendly seals when we arrived.
Hey, what are you guys doing here, huh?
At least we hoped they were friendly. There was a big iceberg right next to shore. We decided to go in and have a close look. A real close look. It seemed like the longer we were out, the colder it got. The falling snow would stick to the water, and there was now ice everywhere. But that didn't seem to bother Captain Andy, who had brought along his dry suit to try out in the icy water.
Yeah, that's alright. I thought it would have gone off by now.
You got a whale back here in the water too. not the one in the yellow, but yeah, big whale. Can you feel the temperature of the water?
Hey?
Can you feel the temperature?
I can feel my feet cold.
That's a good picture.
Come on, the sun! We go sun hunting.
From Enterprise Island, we traveled on to Paradise Harbor. There was a dramatic change in the weather. The snow had stopped and the sun was shining. It even seemed warm at times. We found a large iceberg with a channel of water leading into it. The channel was just wide enough for our boat to go inside. Captain Andy had to do some tricky maneuvering to back us into the narrow channel.
Yes.
You're pretty chuffed with yourself, aren't you?
Oh yes. It's not always that I do this.
Now, this was fun.
Keep it going, Steve.
I like this game. Actually, what we could do is have everyone sat on the boom.
As we went further into Paradise Harbor, the scenery just seemed to get better and better. We went ashore in the dinghy and visited a research base called Almirante Brown. The base belonged to Argentina, but there was nobody there when we arrived. Well, actually, there were some penguins who lived there too. Walkie went with me and had his first close-up encounter with a real penguin.
There are 17 different kinds of penguins in the world, with 7 different kinds living in Antarctica. Penguins can't fly like other birds, but they use their wings for swimming. At Almirante Brown, there were Adelie penguins and Gentoo penguins. The Adelies have solid black heads with a white wing around their eyes. The Gentoos have a band of white on the top of their heads. Both of these species of penguins can dive over 300 feet to catch fish, crabs, and krill for their meals. We
had to leave the beautiful Paradise Harbor behind. Our boat took us on to what would be our last stop in Antarctica, the old British base of Port Lacroix. The base was used to study weather from 1943 to 1962. In 1996, it was restored and turned into a museum to show us what things were like for the people who lived there a long time ago. What do you think, Jen?
I think it's pretty cool. I think there are penguins everywhere. One tried to bite my toe.
Port Lacroix is on Jugla Point at Wanke Island. The base is surrounded by a Gentoo penguin rookery, where many penguins live and have their babies. Most of the penguins we saw were only a few months old. Like some young children, they were a bit clumsy at times.
Hey, watch out for that rock!
Penguins are born with small downy feathers that keep them warm when they are little. The down comes off after a few months when their regular feathers have grown in. The young penguins we saw still had patches of down on them, which made them look comical. They seemed to be having fun playing and learning how to swim together.
Dad, you were gone for a long time.
I know, it was almost a month. I really missed you and your mom and was very happy to see you when I got back home.
Sit down. What do you think? What do you think I might have in this bag? Yeah. There's a walkie up penguin.
Oh,
Did you see a picture of him? Yeah. Does he look the same?
What are you doing?
He's walking like a penguin.
What are you doing now?
Now he's thinking about jumping in the water.
Dad, I hope I get to go to Antarctica someday.
I hope that you do too, Samantha. I wish everyone could have a chance to visit Antarctica so that they can see just how beautiful it is for themselves and know how important it is to always take good care of this very special part of our planet.